there's some people that I think are prophetic in the way of bringing us forward as a nation, or as at least as a group of people, as a church, into what the kingdom should look like.
Okay.
And if we were to play that out, I'm going to mention one. I'll mention one person's name.
Okay.
He's out there. Tony Campolo.
Okay.
He's been a role model for me, and just to talk about my journey. I very much a role model for me in the 80s and 90s. He talked a lot about changing communities by going to the poorest parts of the world, or of the nation, and living amongst them, transforming communities. What does it mean when when we? I think that was in contrast to what the rest of society was teaching us, was to get married and have a family. So the family was a pretty core part of an acceptable path, or a successful path as a human being. And so in the 80s and 90s, when it became clear, there are a lot of people who are not choosing to be married, or who actually don't have the choice to be married. There's you ever wonder why there's an unequal amount of males and females? There's always going to be some that aren't, right? So if you try to make that the structure, you're automatically going to leave out a segment. Now, is that can we say is it God's will that everybody be married, and have this kind of inequality in the sexes? I was thinking, I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah. So anyway, you're dealing with people that aren't in the conventional marriage, and so Tony Campolo would say things like, we ought to be living in community, and not only just the singles, just marrieds and singles. This is community. This is what God wants. But the way that he is expressing the body of Christ. So I was completely on board with Tony Campolo. There was a point in the mid-90s when I think he took the stand that we ought to be accepting the homosexual community. Okay. And I thought, well, that's good, but I was getting a little bit. I was thinking, wow, that's controversial. And then he started really saying, we need to do this. And most, I would say 80% of the evangelical church at that point started putting distance between them and him. And I, not having researched it at all, I thought, I don't know, Tony. So I backed off with the rest of the 80%. And now coming back to this in 2020, I thought, you know what? I think Tony was right. And I started to look him up, and I think so he was way ahead of the game. And so when I start to think of where are we going as a society, this is probably where the fork is in the road, is conservatives, I think, are wanting the family, the conventional family. That's the core. That's how it's been all the time. And if we think about God's kingdom come on earth, I think the picture a conservative, you could have me wrong, but has in their mind is nice, neat families all over in nice houses. For a liberal, I really do see us moving toward accepting the immigrant, becoming a nation of many colors, becoming a place where homosexuals. Okay, and so this is another point of contention. Are you? Is it something you can change? Is it genetic, or is it a choice? Yeah. And now you look at there's always been a homosexual segment in society. Even animals, they say 10%, and I do hear that the argument that if you think if I could change that I'm homosexual, you don't think I would change. So I have to start to think, And after 50 years or so, it's like, no, I think some people are just more. I would go ahead. I used to say more effeminate, but I would say now more maybe more wired. Wired in a certain way, and I maybe in earlier years I would think that's not right, because that's not God's perfect design for us.
Yeah.
Now I start to think, okay, well, it's here, and people are, legitimately expressing at least that this is a legitimate. They wouldn't even say struggle. It's an identity. This is my identity, and so what? So what? So what gives me the right to be up in arms about that? As long as you're not flinging, as Ruth Bader Ginsburg would say, as long as you're not flinging your arms in a way that it hits somebody else in the face.
Sure.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's the big deal? So I think where I'm at is like, what's the big deal? You're expressing love, and
yeah, I could see that. Just even in that one example of this issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've also been through a process, right? Was it Tony Campolo? Is that right?
Mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm,
It's like
mm-hmm.
at first it's like, whoa, it's fringe, right? Out there we can't, and then but it sounds like maybe I assume you're reading the same Bible throughout that period.
Right.
That's my assumption, right? And so that hasn't changed, but maybe as we think through those issues, and maybe specifically for you, maybe there was a heart change or something. Like, what do you think helped make you turn that corner?
Yeah, I think what I am is a pragmatist.
Okay.
It has to work.
Okay.
And I think I spent a lot of years with groups of Christians that kind of live things out in the theoretical or in the spiritual, where it doesn't actually land on people and relationships. I think the crux of whatever we do is relational. I mean, the crux of what what God put us here in order to do is relational. He created us to have relationship with Him. He created another human being to have relationship with each other, to propagate the earth, to have relationship. So it always has. I think it always comes back to that. And so whenever we do things that destroy relationship, I think that is the point when we have to ask the question, what's wrong here? And I don't think we can not ask that question, what's wrong here? So that's what's changed. It's my pragmatism.
I'm just thinking about the point you made about relationship, and just like you, I'm thinking back, is that biblical? Like, what is it that, and as I think about it, I agree, right? That when Jesus came to earth, it was about relationship. It wasn't about, you're not doing this and whatever, clean that up, right?
Yeah.
It was relationship first, and then that changed things.
Yeah.
Right? And so I guess for us as Christians, if we're voting in a certain way, or being advocates for a certain thing that is harming relationships, we need to examine that.
Yeah.
I think, I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, whether it's on the left or the right,
Mm-hmm.
I know that. So that's good, and I can see that that's, in one sense, it's practical. Like when you say pragmatic, and then tied together with that, I think it's a heart of compassion as well.
Yeah.
And maybe they're tied together. Like the world cannot work without compassion.
Yes. I think that is the pinnacle of what Jesus displays, and what truly I think will save us is the ability to have compassion. Conversely, the degree to which we're capable of vilifying or isolating people will define our destruction. So anything that pushes us along the line of vilifying or not communicating, I guess, with any group of, I'd even say living creatures. I mean humans, yes, but I'd even say, because we live in a biosphere, right? We're all dependent. We're dependent on atmosphere. We're dependent on animals, plants. We're all interdependent.
Yeah.
So the minute we start to vilify or even ignore or, make less than any group of living creatures, we're going down the path of destruction. So if we develop that as theory and we go with that for, I don't know, 500 years, we're going down the path of destruction. It's just going to multiply that way. When we go in the path of relationship, that's when you're going kingdom direction, I believe. To boil it down really, to its essence.
Yeah, and I could see that, some people would be on both sides, right? And because as you say that, I have the other side of my brain saying, as Christians, relationship is huge, and then you have the other side. I think maybe it's not the other side, but just another part of it is this whole thing of sin, this whole thing of righteousness and unrighteousness, right? How do you think as Christians we should balance these things, right? Because there's also the area of like there is a right and wrong. As Christians, we believe that there is a right and wrong, and so how do you have relationship even when there are things happening in the world that you don't agree with and like you don't want relationship with those people? Can you bridge that, or like how should we go around that? I think it's kind of hard.
Well, the easy answer is to destroy. Is to ignore and to destroy. That is the easy easy way to deal with it, right?
Just as you say it like that, it's kind of like jarring, right? But I guess you're right.
That's like, what it is.
Get rid of it.
Yeah.
Then I don't have to think about it.
Right. And so that's what we're doing. If
Wow. Okay, so that's the
right?
easy answer.
That's the easy answer.
The better answer. I
well,
hope there's a better one.
Yeah. Well, the answer is very simple, and what Jesus came to do is bring love. So that's the crux, and that's what the whole Bible is about. If you have to sum up the whole Bible, it's love.
So, because that's something that we can make clear too, right? Is that in our conversation, and I've heard it in Christian politics, rhetoric kind of thing, right? Is that we have to say what's right and wrong, right? And we have to like that kind of thing. And so, anytime that we're more accepting or want to create relationships with people with values that are outside of the Christian church, there's this like tension, right? Where it's like, oh, are you saying that that's okay? Or, and it's hard, but then I think what you're saying is like, well, what's the other option? It's destruction, which is opposite of what God did because, he didn't come to destroy, right, but to save the world.
Yeah.
So if we have the heart of God, then what it means is that we have to have that same heart. And I like what you said. To love is, if destruction is the easy answer, then to love is actually not the easy answer. That it could be hard sometimes.
Exactly.
Maybe be a little messy. Maybe I have to. Maybe I'll get it wrong sometimes. I'll make mistakes, and maybe I'll get my hands dirty a little bit because I'm just trying to make this work. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of see that, but maybe it's a journey that it's uncomfortable and that we want to avoid.
I don't know how, but recently, in the recent 20 years, there's been this narrative, it's maybe even longer than 20 years, of the militant church.
Okay.
Right? That, so we can't wait to, of course, Jesus is going to come and rescue us. And so we're all sort of waiting for that day, and there's a phrase, Jesus is coming soon. Oh, the fires, Jesus is coming soon. Yeah. Oh, war, oh, Jesus is coming soon. And there's this going sort of narrative. It's kind of a theory, I guess it's just out there, that we're just hoping that something is just going to sweep us away and it'll be bliss after that.
So in the meantime,
So
we're in like a bunker or something.
or we're there's meanwhile everybody's out to get us.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody's anti-Christian. All those radical lefts, they're anti-family, they're anti-Christian. So that is sort of the same form of I don't hear you, you're just out to get me. And if we only learn to talk, to converse a little bit, to ask questions, like you're doing with a number of people, I really think you have to accept people. You're gonna, so the road to destruction is an easy one. The road to love involves acceptance. I'm sorry to say it, but you're gonna have to accept. We're gonna have to accept unpleasing behavior, unpleasing people. We're gonna have to do that, and it's a tiresome thing.
Yeah.
It's a it's not nice and neat, and but I think those are the alternatives we have in front of us, and it's all too easy to destroy and blow up what we don't have a heart for, or what we don't have compassion for. Which is why I believe compassion really is the central thing that Jesus brought. He was walking. What was this? The people were pressing against him, right? And were they hungry? I can't even remember this situation. But then Jesus turned and had compassion, right? So here he is. He all knowing, all very streamlined. He knows his purpose. He knows he's not going to go to this town because no God called me to this one. But wait a minute. I have compassion. So he's moved by compassion. So with all these grand things that he's called to do to be the savior of the world, he's pulled aside because he has compassion. Yeah. So I think that's so key. Yeah. I want to bring up another example. I was reading Melinda Gates, Bill Gates and their foundation. She, in her book, I can't remember the name, sorry, talking about going to these very kind of backward parts of the world that where women just bear everything. I mean, they have no access to birth control, so they're just pretty much objectified. They're sold off, or they're given off as teenagers to a husband, and from that point on, their sole purpose is to have babies and to clean up. That's all. So while everybody else, the men and society, can get gradually better and better, the woman is going to be the brunt of everything, right? And so she talks about them going into these villages, and you get all the important people that have a meeting together. Well, they're all men. And then they'll be the ones that describe what goes on in the village, and if we only had these tools, or if we only had these things, then we'd be so much better. So they sometimes they will give money, or they give the tools. Well, that only gets handed on to the men, or the ones with reasonable amount of power. They don't trickle down to the women. So and you have some just brutal practices, childbearing practices and all this that kill women, and the men just kind of like that. Well, that's life. I'll get another wife. We lost that one. We'll get another one. And so, how do you get a society to start to not have such brutal practices and come a little bit into more the modern resources we have? Yeah. And she said they found out you can't come in and have a town meeting and say, you guys, you need to do this. Women can't be doing this. You can't be doing it. Doesn't work. That's a white man or a Western person's coming in saying, do this. Yeah. And which is what we do as preachers. We take another gospel over to. She said, no, the thing she found across the board is the men have to learn this thing called empathy. and they have to actually experience for a day, what does a woman go through? And that, when they start to get that,
Yeah.
that feeling, you have to enter in with your feelings and start to live your life through another person. The ability to see life through another person, that is what transforms a community, a backward community. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the theme of our conversations is kind of coming to me, right? Which is, what we're talking about is, we're touching about religion and politics, right? But it's not a left versus right thing. It's not. It's about as a Christian, because we want to delve into that. Is where should our mindset be? Where should the highest priority be?
Yeah.
Where should our hearts be?
Yeah.
In whenever we are, whether we're a pastor preaching about a current event or listening to a debate or voting, right?
Yeah.
Empathy,
compassion,
which comes from, it's something that I think you require, that you need to have compassion. To be like, wow, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can feel that, or I can understand, or I want to understand, right?
Yeah.
That can transform.
Yeah. So can I jump in?
Yeah,
So going toward where our future is going. One path was down this path of one day Jesus is going to just rescue us.
Yeah.
The other path is to begin to engage people with compassion, with empathy, where you see past the things that irritate you, the things that are horrendous, and you start to put yourself in somebody's shoes for a moment. And when you can start to cry, and I actually, this is a gift. I think back in the 80s, I had lost my ability to cry as a teenager. I was hurt so badly. I just said I wasn't going to cry again. I had to regain the ability to cry. And I remember praying a prayer. I was at that missions conference. I said, so the speaker said, pray this prayer, that the things that break the heart of God would break your heart. Yeah. So I prayed that prayer in all earnesty, knowing that I had a hardest time crying. So, okay, Lord, would that my heart would break with the things that break your heart. And I have to say, it didn't happen immediately, but it did happen, to the point where, tears flow quite freely these days. And I think when we begin to pray that prayer, get into the shoes and get past the exterior conflict or the immediate conflict, and enter into that place where they have empathy, you have love for the person, things do change. And I think that's the path. That's my vision when I talk about being a Democrat. I feel like it's a platform that allows, and it actually pursues this sort of future that we go and get. We're not waiting to be rescued. We're not us against the world, but we're trying to get people that are, for me, I happen to have more than a lot in at my age and stage than a lot of the people, the Democrats, immigrants, and just dirt poor people. And I want to live a life that helps us to bridge that gap between the haves and have-nots. Not to ignore them, but to enter into their shoes and just make it a better world. Like we have to be living that out daily, and not waiting for somebody to rescue us or to be so anti anything that opposes what I want my neighborhood to look like. With my lawn and my 2-story house or whatever. I have to be not so much about that, because those kinds of things are always built on the shoulders of those who don't have. You have to realize, like, all the great, huge pyramids, in Africa, in Egypt, everything is built on the shoulders of those that have nothing, the slaves, And so when we can understand that we want to uplift the poor, that's what Jesus came to do. That's what he commissioned us to do. That's what he tells the Israelites to do.
Yeah, and it confused his early disciples and the Pharisees, right?
Right.
Like, why are you eating with them? this is right.
Right,
So,
right.
And maybe, in some sense, that's why it can be confusing to the world too, even today.
Right.
And I can see that that's where your faith, your belief system, and the way that your politics are constructed, they're aligned. That's where you see that connection, right? It's that compassion piece, and for those who don't have a voice, disenfranchised.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, well, thank you for this time, Carolyn. I hope you had fun. I had a good time just getting to know more of your heart, your personal journey, and then also how you've taken all that information and experience and then to be who you are now. The last thing I wanted to ask you about was I know that you started a group, and I know that you're like you're saying you went through a kind of transformation to be more vocal. Could you share a little bit about what are some of the things that you're doing at this time, so that people could support or get involved?
Are you talking about AI?
Anything.
Oh,
AI.
AI.
Anything,
Oh, okay.
AI. Also, like a prayer group.
The prayer group.
Right? Or just
for the
anything
elections.
else that I know that you also have a YouTube video up, right?
Oh,
Just
sure,
ways that people
sure.
can kind of, if they want to learn more about, what you've been up to.
Oh, sure, sure, yeah.
Some of the things.
Okay, other than my music school, I do have a nonprofit called Assignments International, and we are the channel for funds, I guess, to do projects that we have orphans that we support in China, but we're all about being open to hearing God's assignment and taking action on that. So it's assignmentsinternational.com. Recently, we tried to provide face masks for China, and they helped us out to get face masks here when it was needed. I started a prayer group on just to pray about the election. I think my heart for this election, it's. I guess it was disheartening to me to see the amount of Christians jump on board such a corrupt sort of bandwagon, that to the point where we can't even, some people can't even go to the polls without being harassed. And it's just disheartening that so many Christians, I guess, would be so susceptible to the type of behavior and the type of conspiracy theory, and that it gave me a heart to whoever wins to really need to address. I don't know how, just to pray to that we can move toward addressing these sorts of thinking. I don't know that we can do much else with this than pray sometimes, but we are praying, just that people would. I just wish that at least the Christians that I identify with would pray according to how Jesus would, how he picked his leaders. He picked a bunch of uneducated people, but that had heart to follow him, and to really look at biblical examples too of who God picks as leaders. He always exalts the humble and those that have the heart for the people. And if we could just one day, again, part what was formed in the early 80s with the marriage of the Christians and the Republican Party. Christianity has become so politicized that sometimes I think as a just someone off the street that, or even somebody in another nation for that matter, that I heard if you if you Google Christianity evangelicalism, you'll come up with Trump, which is a very
Really?
sad state. I think,
I'll have to
yeah,
try that
I
later.
just,
Wow.
I heard.
But yeah.
But it has just had such an, such an unholy marriage that happened. It really needs to be divorced, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
So that we see Christianity for what it is, so to see Jesus for who he is. And so, that would be my heart, would be to depoliticize the gospel.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, the thing that really moves me is that it's, again, where you're looking for, you're hoping, you're praying for a decoupling of politics.
Decoupling, that's a good one.
Right?
Yeah.
Not a Christianity should be Democrat, right? Not the other way around, right? Where people would look up Christianity America and see like Joe Biden or something, right? That's not what you're trying to
Right, we're not going for that
here.
either. No. Should be about Jesus.
Yeah, right? It's like, I mean, that's incredible, actually. I think, in a sense, what you know, if it's true, right? It's just, that's a description of Christianity in America.
Yeah.
Trump. And hey, we're all flawed humans, you know, he doesn't have to be perfect or anything, right? But the ideals of who Jesus is, what Christianity is about, I cannot see it in him. And I think in the heart of hearts, Christians who really follow it also would agree, you know, that it's the, you know, so, and like you said, the heart would be, the hope would be, people look up Christianity and see Jesus.
Yeah.
So you know, what have we done to ourselves, right? As Christians in America, and I think it is a coupling of it.
Yeah.
That, and I think you know more of the history. It sounds like it was in the 80s that kind of.
Right, Reagan.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting thing is that most Christians were actually Democrat before Reagan. They were actually when Carter's time, most Christians associated with him, with the Democratic Party.
And during a time, whatever this, it was just for whatever reason.
No, it was targeted.
It wasn't or it was like there was a strategy.
I mean, they were Democrat, but the Republican Party targeted, you know, Reagan was actually pro-abortion, or pro-life. Not pro-abortion, pro-life. But he took on the he was pro-choice, but he took on the pro-life stance in order to court the Catholics who were pro-life. So he did that in order to get a base, and then they courted the Republic. Well, they courted the evangelical. Sorry. And then they formed, and actually Rob Schenck, recently I watched, he was a part of the political scene during that time, and the Roe v. Wade back in the early 70s. He's very much a part of that. He said what happened, and he's since then taken he's put distance between him and many of his evangelical friends. He said that there was a Faustian pact that was made with Trump, or like a Faust, you know, that they would, Trump said he would give the Christians their whole laundry list of desires. Just all he needed was for them to make him look spiritual. Wow. And so there was some kind of pact that was made, and it's not everybody, but it trickled down from those leaders that made that pact. And so since then, and that explains a lot of this bizarre behavior, is that Christians do, you know, they listen to their pastors. They're good, you know, obedient people, I suppose. Yeah. And so that's a big part of why this has happened.
Wow.
So, yeah.
And so I could see that's a powerful thing, right? Those ties, and then also you put in the politics part. You know, we all watch the news and listen to the radio. It's hard to come by a non-charged, you know, incendiary conversation about, you know, about things. Yeah. And then we get all riled up and oh, I can't believe they think that. I can't believe whatever. And then
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about a fly on the head, and we're talking, you know, like it's just like all this stuff.
Right.
And one thing I just want to throw in as we kind of conclude is that, you know, I'm a big sports fan, right? And as I look at it, you know, I was watching the Lakers, I'm into the Dodgers right now, and one of the things I told Vicky, my wife, was I sometimes, you know, I'll watch commentary over the sports, right? And then I watch it, and it's just like, oh man, I feel all riled up. Even more than like when I watch the game,
right?
Because someone's like, "Oh, LeBron James is the best," and someone's like, "No, he's not. Michael Jordan is the best."
Right.
And then I just thought, I think this is not good for me. I'm kidding. So I actually stopped watching that stuff. And then I was just talking to, I'm like, it's the same thing on the news, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like, it's not even about LeBron James and the facts. It's about like what side I'm on.
Right.
And I'm like, I hate that guy. You know, and then. So, and all of a sudden you forget what's the heart of it.
Right.
And I
Good
think,
point.
you know, it's like what our heart is that as we talk about these, because these are real issues, and there are, you know, both sides, two sides, and everything, right? If the conversation could be about Jesus, and if we can agree that compassion and love is the thing.
Yeah.
I think we can have constructive conversations, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm getting out of it. Does that sound good?
It sounds good.
It sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, any last words, Carolyn? Or you're good?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, Carolyn, and keep going forth and sharing your message of love, of God's love.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
Amen.